From Microbe TV, this is Q&A with A&V. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and joining me from the upper reaches of New York City, Amy Rosenfeld. Hello, Amy.
Hello, Vincent. How are you today?
I'm well. I had a Zoom call with you this morning and Ian Lipkin and others. That was moderately productive, right?
Moderately productive. I only do productive or non-productive.
Yes, indeed.
I don't do moderate. I don't do gradients. I do ones and zeros. That's it.
Welcome, everybody, to your Wednesday evening Virology fix. And Amy, next week I'm not teaching anymore. Do you think we can go back to 8 p.m.? Would that be a good idea?
Yeah, be a good idea.
Okay, next week, folks, we'll go back to 8 p.m. My virology class ends on Monday. So many possibilities with the hours freed up on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it's good.
How are you today, Amy? Is everything as usual?
Yeah, it's good. Oh, well, no, not really. It's not so good. So the camera doesn't always work.
All right. I'll have to fix it.
I don't know why the camera doesn't always work.
I
can see I can see myself in the camera.
Yeah.
But the program and the camera stop talking to each other. I don't understand.
If you happen to leave, I will get you a new setup, okay? Courtesy of Microbe TV Incorporated. What do you think about that?
Does it come with an egg chair?
Do you want an egg chair? I'll get you an egg chair. Sure. If you promise to live stream, I'll get you an egg chair. Is that a deal?
Okay. You don't know what you're getting into. We'll discuss.
Do you guys know what an egg chair is? Does anyone know? Let's see.
Everybody should know what the egg chair is.
It's by Arne Jacobson.
Yeah.
Okay, here's an egg chair, folks. Let me turn on the screen sharing. Guys.
But mine is not going to be blue.
Yeah, I know, but that's...
Mine is not 100. That is not. That is a knockoff egg chair.
Oh, but that's the way it looks, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much.
What are you going to have it in? Some kind of a fabric?
Yeah, it's going to be red.
So you don't want the knockoff, is that right?
No, I don't want the knockoff. Have you ever known me to get a knockoff?
No, you want authenticity. Anyway, did I say hello to everyone? Let's see, what moderators do we have here tonight? Steph, hello, welcome, and thank you again.
So Vanity.
Vanity Nutrition is here. I saw Tom. Thank you. Les is here. And does that leave Frank? Did I see Frank? I didn't see Frank. Thank you all for coming again. I was chatting with Dr. Rosenfeld in the pre-show, so I didn't have a chance to thank you. But thank you for your kind work. And what did I want to mention? 8 o'clock next week. That was the main thing, yeah. Okay, let's dive into the questions. Look, we have over 300 people. I think that's quite impressive, don't you, Amy?
Yeah, it's excellent.
Okay, let's see. Yes, buonasera. People are talking about masking. Do plants have adaptive immunity? Do fungi? No, they do not have.
Fungi do not have any immunity.
They don't have protein-based. Yeah. They have RNA-based immunity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like RNA interference. They don't make antibodies. They don't have lymphocytes or anything like that.
Nope.
And you know what? Think about it. They have RNA-based immunity, and they've been around a long time. Before animals. They've done very well, right?
Yep.
Even with
they also have a cell wall.
They do have a cell wall.
Which is very protective.
Do you like plants, Amy?
Yeah. Just not in my house.
I was waiting for that. I kind of set you up.
No plants in my house. No
Amy
dirt.
doesn't want plant. Someone said last year on this stream, "Oh, you should get some plants for the incubator." And Amy said, "Nope, no dirt in the incubator."
No dirt. We do not do dirt.
All right. Laura wants to know, "Hi, Amy. My family and I would love to hear the reasoning for your estimate of the pandemic ending mid-2024."
Okay, so there's really poor infrastructure throughout the world for vaccination. And so a pandemic is defined as basically the world's population being afflicted by some kind of entity. And so the length of time that it will be required for that population to either be fully vaccinated, as we are, 3 doses of any mRNA-based vaccine, or 2 doses, what is it, 2 doses of a adenovirus-based vaccine? Or are they boosting the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca also? Anyway, by the time that you have those people either fully vaccinated or they have enough infections that go around their population, will take until approximately the mid-range of 2024. And therefore, it is short-sighted to say just because the American population is got in level of vaccination plus infection, where we are able to see outbreaks, but are able to control them in hospitalization and death, and apply that knowledge to places that don't have the same infrastructure and wealth, is not acceptable. So therefore, until you are going to make it equal throughout the entire world where everybody has the same access to the health infrastructure, you have to account for the fact, and with travel today, you have to account for all of that. And therefore, the pandemic will not be over until the middle of 2024.
Okay, excellent. George says, "My unvaccinated younger 26-year-old brother got COVID in late January. When is the best time for him to get the first dose?"
Yesterday.
Yeah, he should get 2 doses. That would be great. Amy sent me a paper saying if you're infected and recovered and you get 2 doses of vaccine, then you have amazing antibody immunity. Remember that paper, Amy?
Yes, I do.
Patricia says, "To what do you attribute not getting infected?" If you say vax, I'd reply that plenty of people vaccinated and double boosted have gotten infected. So again, my question. I don't know. How would I know? I probably it's partly my behavior, but I have a fabulous immune system. It never overreacts, and it's protected me very well throughout my entire life. So I think, now this is all informal stuff because I have no evidence for this, but I think that's part of it. But yeah, a lot of people.
Anecdotal.
It's all anecdotal, but I have no data on myself. All I know is I was careful, I masked a lot, but in the last 6 months, I've been out and about. So it's possible that I was infected. I didn't know. I just had a COVID test on Monday, and it was negative, but it's PCR. So if I did serology, maybe I should do an antibody test, Amy. What do you think?
You want to do an N antibody test?
Yeah, of course. I don't care about spike. I'm sure I have spike antibodies. But
well, yeah, I'm sure you do too.
But I think, Patricia, the real answer is that I'm a virologist and viruses don't mess with me.
Okay. How much is this test?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. You're going to pay for it, right? You buy the test. I'll get the egg chair, okay? Is a good swap?
Yeah, your test is $25. My egg chair is $9,000.
So, Patricia, I have never had symptoms, okay? But on the other hand, I haven't tested all that much. Many people just get tested a lot and they're positive. So it could be that I at some point I was infected and I just don't know it. Okay?
Well, I mean, we're kind of like my friend in Montreal. He's been quadruple vaccinated for various reasons. Mostly because he started off with the AstraZeneca, and his sister is a physician, and there was questions about the AstraZeneca. And so while I said X, she said Y. And while normally Andrew would listen to me, he listened to his sister, and he did something that I did not advocate. And then she said, oops, yeah, your friend, the virologist, was actually right, which was kind of funny. Anyway, so he says that all of his friends that he socializes with have had COVID but him. I said, well, he said, so it's not possible that I have not been infected. I said, well, there's a difference between being exposed and being infected.
What about you? Do you think you have been infected? Do you think you're antibody positive?
I wouldn't be surprised if I was. I was here, even though I was careful and masked and stuff, I worked and walked around New York City at the height of the pandemic because I live in the city. And I walked all the way down to the 70s and walked back in order to buy groceries. And I moved my sister out in the middle of the pandemic, and she lived on 76 and stuff. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I had been exposed and had an asymptomatic infection, but I'm
telling
fine
you,
with
Amy, N equals two virologists, you know? The
that.
viruses are scared of us.
Badasses. I
We're badasses. Virology badasses.
I understand.
We'd love to know your thoughts on vaccines in immune-compromised people and risk of long COVID in vaccinated people. The discussion on the internet is very toxic on these. Discussion on the internet is toxic in general, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't participate.
Even though Amy has 1 million Twitter followers, she doesn't participate.
Yeah, I don't. And as we were discussing that over Seder about and my sister from California said, well, nothing good has ever come of Twitter. And I was like, yeah, probably. Yeah, and my mom thinks it's hysterical how famous I am. I was like, yeah, Mom, look at this. It went up like you could see, because she keeps track. You could see where it spikes and where.
Proud of her daughter. That's good.
It's just funny.
Anyway, vaccines in immune-compromised people.
Define immune compromise.
Yeah,
See,
there are
I
all
hate
kinds,
that term. I hate that term.
Now, what about
Because
people with B-cell deficiencies?
So apparently there's very little, there's not a lot of super severe disease, or it's not outside of the range of normal for people who have B-cell deficiencies.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
How about people with T-cell deficiencies?
Well, we don't really know. We don't really look at them.
Yeah.
We just lump them all in immune compromised, and because B-cell lymphomas you don't really hear a lot about T-cell lymphomas, right? You hear a lot about B-cell lymphomas, AML and CCL and CLL and blah, blah, blah. So they're all B-cell deficiencies. You don't hear a lot about complement deficiencies and stuff, but they are. And they don't have an extraordinary outlier range in numbers or percentages of severe COVID or death. It's not the same as when you look at enteros.
So how would
you
a
know
person?
What I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Enteros get sick with agammaglobulinemics get very sick with enterovirus infections, right?
So do common heavy chain thingamabobbers.
Yeah, deletion.
Yeah, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Common gamma chain, yeah. So what about long COVID in vaccinated people? This is a problem which we've been talking about for a couple of weeks. I don't think we have any good data on long COVID in vaccinated people. I think it's. What do you think, Amy?
I also don't really understand what the disease is. I agreed with, actually, I think I completely agree with what Ian said this afternoon, where it's two different diseases. You have structural differences, right? You have structural problems that do not heal, right?
Yeah. So Ian, we were asking Ian about long COVID, and he said, okay, there are two general categories. You have some people who have structural damage to the lung, to the heart, to blood vessels, and that would make it hard for you, for example, to catch your breath and so forth. And then there's a whole other category of inflammatory diseases, correct?
Yeah.
So it's not correct to say long COVID and put it all together, because there may
Well,
be
right.
differences in terms of, the response to infection. I mean, this is obviously a concern, because if a substantial fraction of people get long COVID after being vaccinated and getting a mild infection, this is a problem, right? But I'm not
I
convinced that
don't
we
see
have the
that
data.
we have that.
Yeah, we don't have the data to say that, but stay tuned. People are looking, right?
Right. I mean, Akiko has been on Slavic talking about, like, she's the expert on long COVID. I think that but I also think, like, having had a lot of pneumonia in Montreal and having scar tissue on my lung, where I think that physical damage is not a signature of this disease. It happens in a lot of diseases that we don't that you get. Like, it happens if you have bacterial pneumonia.
Yes.
And I'm sure that there are scars from very severe influenza cases and stuff.
Yes, of course. I
So
asked
I
them
don't
that
know
today.
that
Yeah.
this is unique to
No, I don't think it's unique to
maybe the
COVID. And
broad tissue tropism is unique to SARS-CoV-2 infection, but I don't think that tissue damage is unique to a viral
what do you
infection.
mean broad tissue tropism?
Well, you just said it does the heart and the blood vessels and the lungs and the pancreas and stuff, whereas flu really just does the lungs, just causes severe damage in the lungs.
Right, but it also induces an inflammatory state, which has
But I'm
other
not talking about the
consequences.
inflammatory state.
Yeah, but when you say tropism, you don't mean that SARS-CoV-2 is reproducing at all these
No,
sites,
I'm
right?
just saying no.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just saying that there is some kind of damage, right?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Do you have any information on subvariants of B2 found in New York and Canada?
It's B2.
Yeah, it's a subvariant, but it hasn't been found to do anything different, right? It's just a subvariant, and because it's a subvariant of Omicron, it's automatically a VOC.
Okay.
Last chat you mentioned no one does T cells, but I have. People have done them. Okay, Patricia, you take my statements out of context. I was saying in terms of looking at correlates of protection, nobody is looking at T cells. What you have done is not relevant to that. I understand that people study T cells in other contexts, but in the context of vaccination against COVID, it's all about antibodies, and you can't deny that. Okay?
I think that Shane and Alessandro have like written reviews recently about that, right? About the fact, and I think that review that Bonnie Offit told you to look at by Wary
Yeah,
at Penn really highlighted the fact that we have neglected T cells in the topic
absolutely.
in the discussion
Absolutely.
of correlatives of protection. I think that Patricia might want to review the science article.
Yeah,
Would
we
be
did that
good.
on a TWIV. And that article was all a call to arms to start thinking about T cells and developing assays which can be more broadly used. For example, people may say, okay, there are T cells that recognize these peptides in vaccinated or infected people. That's what Crotty and Seti do. But no one says, how does that correlate with protection? That's what I'm talking about.
Well,
So,
then you'd have to do rag knockout mice, right? Or no, rags would just give you
no,
B cell
that would just B
deficiency.
cells. Yeah, you can do various knockouts to get rid of T cells, but they did that in the non-human primates. The guy at the Rocky Mountain Lab did that a year ago, right? And it wasn't a complete answer.
No.
Remember, people. What is the news, Amy Rosenfeld? Do you have
News
any
about
news?
what? What news does Sean Miller want me to talk about? The fact that I sent everybody pictures of a brisket that wasn't a brisket?
Does Amy have any good news to share? You can say yes or no. You could say yes or no, Amy. It's fine.
I don't really have any news to share.
Will you ever?
Maybe one day. Passover will be over on Saturday.
Okay. All right. Charlotte says, what do we think about what Florida court ruled against and said no masks? So I think it's ridiculous.
A political decision.
It is not a sign. I don't want a judge to telling me whether I should wear a mask or not. How screwed up is that? Whether the science says it or not, the judge didn't go by the science. The judge just went on First Amendment rights. BS. If you're going to get sick, you better not worry about your First Amendment rights or whatever the hell it was. So I think it's BS 100,000 times over. And I have said for weeks now, we don't need to wear a mask. But I don't want a judge telling me that. So I'm still wearing a mask on the train and the subway in protest to that friggin' judge in Florida. Jesus, what a ridiculous state that we are in. What do you think, Amy?
I think that her decision, that the rationale that she used to base her decision on is inappropriate. You need a scientific rationale, not some rationale that is along a political line.
Yes.
Because when you get sick, so if people get sick and somebody dies and they say, oh, well, it's because there was no mask mandate or whatever. And how would you, wouldn't you feel horrible that your decision led to an increase of somebody's death?
She won't feel horrible. I guarantee it. It's not in her DNA to feel horrible.
That's why I'm not a lawyer.
But the thing is, the decision to lift the mask mandate or not should come from CDC. It should not come from a judge who knows nothing about science and probably nothing about law either.
Well, yeah, there was a question about her appointment because it was done the day before he left office.
Well, that was the purpose of putting these incompetent people in. Which virus or bacteria scares and intimidates you the most? Which is the most difficult to study and understand? The most difficult are the ones you can't grow. The unculturable bacteria. Much of your microbiome cannot be cultured.
Yeah, but most of your microbiome is commensal. So I think one of the bacteria that's most difficult to study and really get a handle on why we don't really have good therapies is probably TB. It's very difficult to grow, isn't it?
It takes a long time, yeah. Do you remember the guy at Einstein? What's his name?
Bill Jacobs.
He said he had a herpes vaccine against TB once, right? Vectored vaccine. He was all excited about it.
Yeah, I remember that. And we told Saul, and Saul just threw up his hands and scoffed.
Amy, is there a bacterium or virus that scares you the most?
The next one around the corner.
The virus scares me the most is the human virus. We are viruses of the earth, and that really scares me because we're destroying it. We're not even
but we're
commensal.
Not technically a virus.
There's
we're able to reproduce ourselves.
There's a movie called The Matrix, Amy. Have you seen The Matrix?
Seriously? You're asking me if I saw a movie?
Anyway,
we don't even know each other.
When one of the program guys with the black suits, white shirts and black
Who doesn't have a black suit and a white shirt is a programmer? What movie doesn't have one of these?
He says
people?
That he captures Morpheus. And
who?
Morpheus is the leader of the rebellion, and he says, "You are nothing but a virus of the earth." It's a great scene, and I'm sure our listeners here remember it. Yes, humans are not viruses, but in terms of screwing up the earth, we are. I'm not afraid of any virus or bacterium. They are afraid of me. Seriously.
Yeah, and your zapper gun.
Can the SARS-CoV-2 South Africa study discussed by Daniel this week be useful in analyzing any possible patterns and mutations, given that it used data from January, December? Do you have an answer to that, Amy?
I'll wait for you.
I'm going to look for the paper because I don't remember. It's only been a week and I don't even bloody remember. Let's see.
Well, it
Yeah,
was 30 papers ago.
SARS-CoV-2 prevalence in South Africa, systematic review and meta-analysis. We report high seroprevalence in Africa, suggesting greater population exposure and protection than indicated by surveillance data. That's the conclusion of the article, so I don't know that you could predict anything from it. Amy,
I'm not clear what it said.
It means that there are probably more people infected than we know from seroprevalence data. That's the conclusion.
Well, for sure. So I don't know why this is rocket science, but okay.
Well, it has to be done, right? Kind of study that.
Okay,
I don't think,
say
but
so.
but there's nothing, Ted. There's nothing that we can do about prediction from that. No, all it does is say that if you do serological surveys, you're going to underestimate. And Amy, would you be worried about cross-reactivity at all? Because that's your thing, cross-reactive antibodies.
Well, are they doing just ELISAs or are they doing microtiter neutralization? Because I think that antibodies can bind between multiple coronas, but they don't neutralize.
This is not even a study. This is a meta-analysis. They searched for studies that had been published already. So it's probably a mishmash, which is bad. Yeah, if you're combining neutralization.
It's not good form.
No. You know what Mark Crislip used to say? A meta-analysis, you try and take a lot of cow poo piles and put them together and try and get gold. But he says what you end up in the end with is a big pile of cow poo. That's Mark Crislip.
From Puscast?
Yep.
Well, at least he was smart.
Bamfield wants you to record his outgoing email. Oh, that would be so funny.
Voicemail. His outgoing voicemail. Sure. We can do that. Send everything to Vincent.
Question. Strange hepatitis in the UK and elsewhere.
Yes, it's here and in England. Yeah.
What's so strange about it? Okay, here's the latest. From ProMed Mail.
Okay, I'm sitting down.
Why do you have to sit down? This is a hepatitis undefined, USA, Europe, Israel. Children, possible adenovirus. I don't know. So those are outbreaks in Britain, USA, Denmark, Ireland, Netherlands, Alabama, 9 children under the age of 10. Possible analysis has revealed a possible association with adenovirus 41. I don't know. Like it must have done serology, right, Amy?
I guess.
Adenoviruses tend to be wintertime causes of respiratory infection, but can cause infections of other organs, including the liver. But adenohepatitis is quite unusual, especially with these numbers of cases in a short time. Most cases have been reported in immunosuppressed hosts. Yeah, these are enteric adenoviruses that cause mostly diarrhea in children, and it's not been known to be a cause of hepatitis. And it's not even clear if the link will be confirmed. So that's what we know. ProMed Mail is a good source. That's where I turn to.
It's good.
Okay. I showed Amy a video that I found in the house of Jillian Michaels. That was from 2009. I didn't even know we had it, and it's unopened. And I think it's pretty funny that I had a video of her, and then she interviewed me last year.
It's good.
What's the news with the less than 5 COVID vaccines, Amy?
June. Sorry, June. Albert Bourlas came out and said that he anticipates having put together some kind of package in June with new data. Said this safety is all there. They're just looking at efficacy.
Oh, Elizabeth said she'll pitch in for your chair.
That's
okay.
Very nice.
That's very nice of you. Are you going to post our videos of this spring's virology course? No. I decided not to because I just taught it live stream in the fall, and it's essentially the same course, and I don't need to duplicate videos, so I'm not posting it, no. Sylvia, thank you for your contribution. Is there any truth in tooth decay possibly being viral?
No.
No. No, not at all. It's clearly bacterial, yeah. Bacteria get around your mouth pretty easily, right?
We're
And
living in a sea of bacteria.
Steph knows what an egg chair is. Well, I'm sure
That's
you live in
good.
San Francisco, you're sophisticated. But when Amy first mentioned it years ago, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, well, I was precocious.
Your mother doesn't like egg chairs.
No, I don't know. I don't know if she does or not. She wouldn't know what it is.
If you told her you bought one and told her what you spent on it, she would freak out.
Yes, she would, but that's why you don't tell her those things. You just say, have a seat. What do you think? I haven't learned anything in my 400 years on this earth?
Does MERS transmit by zoonosis? Yes, it goes from camel to people and very short chains of human to human transmission. But usually
Short
it
chains,
fizzles
are we
out.
talking 1?
2 to 3. There was a slightly longer chain in a South Korean hospital because they didn't know it was MERS that had been imported, and they have a lot of patients close together. But mostly it's 2 or 3 people, and then the next infection is a new spillover from camels. You get a couple of cases a month, pretty constantly. Yep.
Yeah.
Is your egg chair going to be red, Amy?
Red or purple, yeah.
As a 62-year-old with high blood pressure, overweight, what are your thoughts on a 4th shot? Should I wait for the upcoming Moderna variant-specific vaccine in the fall? I don't want to give you medical advice, but I don't see any evidence that you would need a 4th shot, a second booster. Is that true that Moderna is going to have a variant-specific vaccine in the fall, Amy?
I don't know if it's variant specific. They're testing a bivalent or multivalent thing for the fall, yeah.
Yeah, because variant alone doesn't really do much for you as opposed to ancestral vaccine, right?
Right.
As witnessed by the paper we did that you had sent to me,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Astral
but,
says...
witnessed by, various other, studies.
Amy, your smile makes me smile.
It's good.
Good. I enjoy the clinical updates, but I think Dr. Griffin is very conservative in his recommendations. For example, Easter Passover should be outdoors, he said. Yeah. Amy, did you do Passover outdoors?
No. We did not do Passover outdoors. Although one parent was busy calling everybody about this person has a sniffle, this person has a cough, which I eventually was like, guys, stop overreacting. And the next parent, the following day, I can't take it anymore. The following day, at the next parent's house or family, there is a granddaughter who's under 5 who's running around with just doggy. So she has this white and black dog that is on wheels.
Yeah.
And his name is just Doggy.
Kidding.
Just is the first name and Doggy's the last name. Just
That's
Doggy.
Not nice.
So she calls it. And we all sat at the table and inside for quite a while.
Well, I didn't do Easter or Passover.
Well, the other thing is if everybody but the kid was fully vaccinated, why do I need to go outside? Then there's saying that the vaccine, there's no point in the vaccine. We haven't progressed very far from 2 years ago, and that's not a statement I want to say.
Rach said, I even bought bagels today, and I had not had a bagel for years. You have influence.
Well, did she buy the right kind of bagel? You have to find out if she actually bought a bagel or a sweet roll
Rach.
with a hole.
Okay, Rach, let us know. Let us know. Steven says, I received
approved.
a shingles vaccine. It says a recombinant. Yes, very good. You got Shingrix, which is the spike glycoprotein. It's called GH of varicella zoster virus, which is produced in cells using recombinant DNA technology. That's what they call it, a recombinant vaccine. But you know, Amy, calling it recombinant to most people is not going to mean anything, is it? It's a protein. It's a protein-based vaccine with adjuvant.
We shouldn't call it recombinant. It just confuses the general population.
Yeah, it sounds like a recombinant, but
Well, it sounds bad because we're always saying how you shouldn't use any GMO product without recognizing the fact that we're all GMO'd.
yeah, are you and I GMO'd?
For sure. Did you not have any retroviruses that,
Yes,
changed it?
I
Okay,
do.
so
Very good. Amy, tell us what cells, medium, and overlay you use for 68. Are there alternatives that might be better but too expensive?
So many viruses, you can try alternatives, but they will not form plaques. So there's no alternative. This is the only agar that it farms plaques on. We do our EVD68 plaque assays using RD cells. We use 2x DMEM that we cut with 1.8% noble agar. So then it becomes 1x with 0.9% agar.
Did you say the cells?
RD.
RD? Rhabdomyosarcoma.
Yep.
Amy and V, are you eating at restaurants?
I don't really go to restaurants. I don't have time.
I have to turn my cup around, right?
Okay. What do you pull off it?
No, not pull off it. Yeah, I was thinking I don't really go all that much, but I have been in restaurants. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, but I don't really consider that fact that one should not use me as a gauge because I go once every 6 months when my sister's in town. That's about it.
If you invited me to a restaurant, I'd go. No problem. I have zero problem going to a restaurant.
I don't want to pay for you. You eat too much.
No. It's you is meaning Mr. Pepper, for example. If anyone asked me to go to I'd go. I have no problem. I walk into the bagel store all the time. It's fine.
And sometimes you buy the wrong ones.
I buy sesame bagels. What's wrong with that? Look,
no, it's good. But didn't you buy some other crazy one?
I got family requests for everything in whole wheat, okay? I don't touch those. I don't touch them.
Well, the everything is good. The whole wheat is iffy.
I don't eat whole wheat. It's for other people in the family. Tom wants to know where we would be today if vaccines had not been developed.
Under quarantine.
We'd have big waves. Maybe bigger. And no end in sight to them. Like right now, low numbers, even though they've ticked up a bit in the U.S. Low numbers pretty much, but it wouldn't be low because we have more. But remember, 1918 pandemic eventually stopped without any vaccines. So at some point we would get to that. Maybe in Amy's 5 years, who knows?
Maybe.
So without this mask mandate, will my 88-year-old mom be okay on the plane tomorrow? She can wear a mask. Doesn't mean you can't wear one. If you're worried, you have to, assess your personal level of worry. And if you're worried, wear a mask. No problem. No one's going to say anything to you. Tell your mom if someone says something that she should clock them. Bet she has a mean punch. I've been chewing.
I'm an advocate for violence.
I'm joking because I'm not violent at all.
I know.
And, 88-year-old lady, it's even more of a joke, right? Or maybe not. I've been chewing on this uneducated thought between quasi-species and hypersomatic mutation. Any correlation, can one drive the other or unrelated? Well, they're both mutation, right? Quasi-species, which is the makeup of a virus population.
I don't understand how this is the answer to the question. So what? That they're both mutations.
Can you let me finish? Can you let me finish? Teach.
Well, why can't we need to skip the whole sermon. Let's just get to the point.
No, I'm a sermonizer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no sermon today.
They're
No
just both
sermon.
mutations. They're not related to each other. No. Because quasi-species arise without any selection pressure caused by the antibodies that are made by hypersomatic mutation. So no relationship between the two. Nope.
Well, I mean, in theory, there could be relationship between, but generally, no.
Not. Yep. Is it correct that the current H5n1 outbreak is dangerous to wild birds and poultry but poses minimal risk to people? Boy, you wrote
Very
it
dangerous to
beautifully.
the bald eagle.
Yes, it's dangerous to birds of various sorts, but not risk to people. No. No H5n1 infections in the U.S. and very few overall globally.
Plus, we have a vaccine.
Yeah, I was looking it up. We actually have a vaccine, an H5n1 vaccine, which is part of the U.S. national stockpile. So should there arise an H5n1 outbreak, we could deploy it. How about that?
Well, I think the bald eagle would like us to deploy it.
There are chicken vaccines, but bald eagles are hard to vaccinate, Amy.
I think we have them all captured because at one time I think they're all tagged, or a lot of them are tagged because at one time they were like an endangered species on the brink of extinction. Isn't that what the article said? That they were like 3,000 of them, and now there's 700,000.
Yeah, they're back. It's good.
All
If
right,
H5n1 is
two more questions, and then I have to go.
If H5n1 is not harmful to humans, why don't they slaughter infected poultry for consumption rather than destroying them? Well, they're trying to stop the outbreaks, and they don't want to feed people virus-laden chickens, right? You just don't want to push your luck.
Well, not only that, but you want to slaughter them and you quell them, so you kind of like bury them alive so that it doesn't move from pen to pen on these huge chicken farms. That's what I learned when I interviewed at Maryland. Was you bury it, you do it so that it doesn't go through the entire farm. Because that would be an economic disaster for the company.
Yeah. They're saying, Amy, you should look into hydroponic plants. There's no dirt.
Yeah, sure. Fine. In my spare time. Thanks for the suggestion. Not really that helpful, Joe.
What do you think of the flu and COVID vaccine?
Okay, let me know how it works out for you.
Yeah, we have to see how it works. It's being tested, right?
Well, the thing is that there's viral interference between the two viruses, so I'm not sure how the vaccine is going to work.
Well, if they're inactivated, it doesn't matter. They're mRNA vaccines, right?
Yeah.
Australia's boosting AstraZeneca with mRNA vaccines. I think that's a good idea.
Sure. Okay, two more. It's 9:15, and I have to go plate out my cells.
Okay.
Hey.
Let's find a question for you. Relative is 62. Obstructive apnea, slightly overweight, otherwise healthy, 3 times Moderna, mild breakthrough. Any reason to get a second booster?
I would think no, but one should always consult their physician.
I'm a virologist. Viruses don't mess with me. Yeah. I'm of course joking, but I think it's a cool thing. Amy and I, they don't mess with us, right, Amy?
We're badasses, isn't that what we said at the beginning?
We're badasses. Tom says, my understanding that Pfizer and Moderna are virtually identical. Therefore, as I consider a 4th shot after 3 Pfizers, should I switch to Moderna? It doesn't matter. I mixed Moderna and Pfizer. But
Amy don't you? Does that explain the 3 heads and 4 arms coming out of your back?
There's a slightly different polyethylene glycol in the Moderna and Pfizer, right?
And yes, and there's a paper that talks about the antibodies using Moderna that gets against PEG. Yeah.
PEG. You sent it to me today. Yeah, and Moderna induces anti-PEG antibodies, but Pfizer does not, right?
Yeah, something like that. You know.
People are saying that your egg chair is $9,000. They're choking on it.
Well, then they should not wait to see the next chair that I want, which is 11.
Elizabeth withdrew her offer to contribute to it. This is too much.
Seriously?
Yeah,
You can't give backs.
it's okay.
I didn't
I
ask
didn't
her
know
to
it was.
pay for the whole thing.
I thought it was
Really?
1,400.
Seriously?
Can I get you the knockoff, please?
No.
All right, I'll
But I'm
contribute
not
14.
holding it to. I'm not holding it to you. Don't worry
I'll
about it.
contribute 1,400. How's that?
No, it's fine. It's fine. I can afford my chair. I don't understand.
Okay.
I mean, Elizabeth, I can understand. She didn't really recognize who she was dealing with. You, on the other hand, I don't know what excuse you're going to come up with. I'll give you overnight to make sure
kidding.
it's good.
I'm kidding. You know I am. All right, here's the last one for you. There are reports of COVID-19 patients short of breath, feeling lousy, responding to Paxlovid. Is the shortness of breath direct viral damage, cytokine, vaccine, or both?
Not clear.
Yeah, it's hard to know because if the infection is proceeding, you don't know if it's that or the Paxlovid, right?
Mm-hmm. Not clear at all.
Astral says you could probably make a chair out of a dinosaur egg for $9,000.
No, you can't. People just don't understand. Chairs, and this woman, this Patricia Lee, says the chair does not look comfy. Of course it's comfortable. It's good for your back. That's the whole point of this egg chair. That's what he did. It was ergonomic design.
Is it over for us in the Isle of Man? We are fully vaxxed at 96%. Kids have mostly had it. We've all gone back to normal. Is that wise?
Sure.
That's Rach.
Sounds good.
The bagel lady. Oh, she got a bagel at the Isle of Man. Do you think they have good bagels
Really? You can
there?
get bagels at the Isle of Man?
Apparently, because Rach said she hadn't had one in years, and because we've been talking about it, she got one.
Wow. I wonder. Wow. Well, I guess you can import anything. There's FedEx.
Yeah, I mean, you're
I mean,
gonna have.
doesn't she did not say that it was made on the Isle of Man. So you just
No.
hit the FedEx button and voila, FedEx will drop you off anything you want. That's the beauty of FedEx. They don't ask. They just drop off. See? There's a logic to this madness. All right, this is the last one.
All right.
Then I have to go.
All right. Is there a risk of getting a fourth dose? Is there any risk of the booster?
There's always a risk. It's like unnecessary surgery. There's always a small risk. However, if you feel that you can't go on with your life without a fourth dose, be my guest, go get a fourth dose.
So Elizabeth said you deserve your chair, but she can't afford it.
Well,
Okay.
it's fine. It's a one-time purchase. So if you think about it, if I buy one expensive article that lasts 40 years and I amortize the cost of it, it's probably less expensive than buying multiple inexpensive articles over the course of that 40 years.
It's true. That's Amy's philosophy.
That
Buy
is
something
my
that's going to last.
philosophy.
The only problem with that, Amy, is if you end up not liking it, you're kind of stuck with it.
Well, you have to test it out. You don't make non-prudent, hasty decisions when it comes to these things.
Yeah.
You know, you have to think about this. How long do you think I've been thinking about this? You think I just thought of it yesterday?
No, I don't. You think things carefully.
I was going to say, I've been talking about this chair for at least 5 years.
Do you have a plaque assay to finish?
ELISA to wash and HeLa cells to spin and plate out so that they don't overgrow.
Should do it so that you're not there too late, okay?
Yeah, I gotta go.
All right, thank you, Amy.
Oh, and we should ask the guy with the lights if this is better. Because I adjusted them. I made them lower. I pushed the minus button.
I adjusted your color on my end.
Yeah, but so. I thought he told me that. I thought you told us.
No, but what we have to do is not just pushing those buttons. We have to.
That's the easy solution.
It has to be matched with the camera. You have to adjust the color temperature in the camera and the lights and make sure they match. Because right now they're mismatched. The camera is at like 5700K and the lights are at 2700K, and that's bad. That's my fault. I screwed up when I set them.
Oh, so they need to go up?
Yeah, but don't do anything in situ. Oh, it looks better actually. What did you do?
I pushed the button to go up.
All right, it's enough. It's enough. You're losing that warmth. It's
All
good.
right, well, we'll push the button to go down. This is the beauty
No,
of
Amy's
the
having
button.
fun. Amy's having fun.
It's like being in the elevator with the 4-year-old where he pushes every button and it stops on every floor.
Excellent.
See, this is the problem when you get a new toy. I don't understand. People should know about sending.
Looks good. The color is very good now. Excellent. And the sweater is gray.
Excellent.
The shirt is purple. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, it's all good. All right,
I'm going to Long Island tomorrow. Okay.
Well, okay. I'm going not to Long Island.
Okay. Just so you know, in case you wanted to know where I was. Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, folks. Amy was in a good mood tonight, right? What do you think that means? I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. What do you think it means? Just guess, okay? All right. James says just because people have been vaxxed, got COVID, doesn't mean being vax boosted doesn't prevent infection. Yeah, but the vaccinated people shed less and for a shorter period of time, so they're overall going to be less contagious, and they will have less severe symptoms as well. Zachary writes, I love that as the most cautious in the world are lifting mask mandates. Barak Karan goes on CNN to say if everyone wore N95s for 4 weeks, the pandemic will end. Well, that's ridiculous, right? It's another uninformed statement. I agree with you, Zachary. Is it true that an individual's immunity constantly waxes and wanes depending on diet, rest, stress, etc.? So there are there are effects, but it's not clear what part of the immune system these conditions act on, right? You're not going to make your antibody levels go up or down several fold even, but they may have effects on lymphocyte numbers. They may have effects on cytokine responses and so forth. But I don't think to say they constantly wax and wane is correct. I think you're generally at a certain level, and when you get an assault of an infectious agent, they go up, and then they contract over the next few months. But I think on a weekly or monthly basis, they don't go up and down. They don't go up and down. Yeah. All the numbers here in central New York are bad. The CDC agrees we have 2 new subvariants and about 19% positivity rate. So it's, hospital counts are meaningless. Yeah, so they are testing a lot of people, and so they're seeing numbers go up. There are probably a large number of unvaccinated people. But remember, vaccinated people can get infected. We know that. We've known that for some time. They just don't get really badly sick, which is what we want. And that's the way these vaccines are working. They are preventing severe disease. They're not preventing infections. And so I don't think it has anything to do with a particular variant or subvariant. I think it has to do with human behavior, which is changing as the weather is warming, and reinfections and infections of unvaccinated people. Doesn't the mask help from catching? Yes, of course. Of course it does. I know much isn't known, and I think people they looked at were pre-vaccine, but is the brain damage shrinkage something vaccination should lower risk, or too early to speculate? So, I was looking at that paper yesterday, and I just don't know that it means anything. I don't know that the differences are substantial to make a difference. I don't know if that happens routinely with other infectious diseases because we simply haven't looked. We're looking at COVID under a microscope, right? And we're finding things, and we say, oh my gosh, look at what's happening. But In fact, this may be happening with other infectious diseases. So I think we need more information about that. Should vaccination lower the risk? I don't know. It's a good question. Vaccination should lower the risk of long COVID, right? It seems to, but exactly how much, we don't know. I mean, maybe your brains shrink and expand on a regular basis, a certain amount, right? I don't think we know. And so I would be careful about that study. I don't think you should conclude at this point that it would even happen in vaccinated people who are infected, right? I don't think we have the data to say that. Do severe initial symptoms, high fever, prostration, very sore throat, cough, aches, and pains portend deterioration to severe disease and justify antivirals immediately? No, they don't. And I understand what you're getting at. You have to make a decision. You can't wait. The worst thing you can do, and Daniel Griffin is 150% on this, you can't say, let's wait and see what happens. No, because if the patient gets worse, then it's too late to give an antiviral or a monoclonal. So if someone has symptoms and they're at risk, you should give them antivirals and monoclonals. I know many people who are not at risk. They're young and have no risk factors, but who knows, right? Maybe there's something we don't know. Their doctors prescribe Paxlovid. It's available. I don't think it's a problem to take it. But these symptoms do not portend a more serious course on their own. You can have a more serious course without that. Do you think there will be resistance to molnupiravir? So we talked with Richard Plemper about this on TWIV last week, right? And he said they tried very hard to get resistance and they were unable to, which does not mean it will not happen. I suspect we eventually would see it. Again, it depends on how many people are getting the drug. Maybe a lot of people won't get the drug, so we won't see it. But I suspect if we keep using it, we will. Yeah. We'll see resistance. The Canadian government is recommending a fourth full dose of Pfizer. I don't agree. Chris, I think you might have emailed me this question. I'm very sorry I didn't get to it. I don't agree with a fourth full dose with everyone. There's just no indication that helps in any way. For 4 months, you'll have high antibodies and you'll prevent infection. And then it's going to go down. And so if you say to me, well, it prevents severe disease, yeah, it does because you're preventing infection. Of course you're going to prevent severe disease. But once it's down, does it do any better at preventing severe disease than if you only had one booster? We don't know. And there's no data to suggest that. And I think that's what you would need to justify the fourth dose. So I totally disagree with the directions that many countries are going with respect to multiple doses. This is just not the way to deal with this. Why would there be resistance if people only take it for a short period? Because, viruses exist in a logarithmic world. They make a lot of offspring in a very short time. And among those offspring are lots of mutants. And if one of them is resistant to molnupiravir, it'll be selected. So the length of time doesn't have anything to do in viruses because it's a whole different ball game. Yeah. I had the flu when I was 51. I had pneumonia. Yeah, in some certain cases, you can have secondary bacterial pneumonia after influenza. So if you start to recover, you can have bacterial pneumonia, or the virus can go into the lung itself and cause pneumonia, very much like we see with SARS-CoV-2. Yeah. Do I believe there is a link? The believe word kind of bothers me, right? It's not about a belief. It's about what did the data say. And I read the ProMed mail, and I think there's not a strong link. They may have some antibodies to adeno in those kids. I don't know if they isolated the virus, but, a lot of kids do have adeno in their intestines at this time of year. So I think You need more data to prove that. Could be, but too early to tell. Okay, and sorry to waffle, but that's science, right? It's good, Patricia, that you listened to Shane and Twiv, and also Alessandro Sette. You've been on a couple of times. Chris, 3 full Pfizers during the past year. No, as I said, Chris, you don't need it. Lex Friedman strikes me as an intelligent, sincere individual. What was your impression when on his podcast? So I thought he was an intelligent, sincere individual. Now he's saying that, when he talked to me about possible lab origin, he said I was talking off the cuff. So that really pisses me off, Lex. I've been working on viruses for 40 frickin' years. Do you really think that's off the cuff? And how many years have you been working on viruses? 0. So don't tell me about cuffs or anything like that. So I'm pissed at Lex for saying that. He should know better. But when I went into his house, which is where he records the pods, he said, "Don't tell people you're an expert. They don't care." To which I say, screw you. It's the only thing that matters is being an expert in the world. Actually, as you folks all know, it doesn't matter if you're an expert because you can become rich and famous without being an expert in anything. But in my book, my personal Racaniello book, being an expert is what matters. I so value expertise. That's why my picks for the last few weeks have been about people doing craft, which I respect so greatly, people polishing a craft to be really good at it. So that's what I think is important. And I'm sorry that he has gone to the dark side. Probably too much influence of Rogan. Jeffrey says, next time I get an upper respiratory infection from my elementary school kids, should I buy a couple of $1,000s worth of equipment, primers and probes, and teach the kids some biochemistry? Well, I don't think you need to spend all that much. The equipment is much less for use in classrooms anyway. And I would go to, if you know how to do it, that's great. I think that would be fabulous to teach kids to swab themselves and do a little PCR. It would be great if the school lets you. Who knows, right? Never know. Okay. Is there any data on songbirds and bird flu? No, that's a good question. The kinds of birds that seem to be affected are water birds, gulls and ducks and that sort of thing. Terrestrial birds like chickens and turkeys and quails. I don't know about let's look it up. Songbirds and H5n1. Can songbirds get bird flu? Yeah, that's the thing. Not clear at all. Because many wild birds, I don't know if a songbird is considered a wild. Many wild birds are resistant to infection. And, these outbreaks that spread on poultry farms spread within the farm from bird to bird. So I don't know. I think... I haven't heard of it. The birds I hear get infected are different kinds of birds. Yeah. Please explain why T-cell testing is difficult. Well, the assays are harder to do than neutralization assays for antibodies. Those are very easy. You mix serum with virus and you infect cells and you ask if the serum has antibodies that block infection. The T-cell functional assays are not so straightforward. You don't ask if a T-cell can block infection. You could ask if a T-cell could kill a virus-infected cell, but that would be much more involved. You can ask, do people have T cells after either vaccination or infection that recognize viral proteins? You can do that. People have done it. There are a variety of assays for that. Some of them are not so bad. Some of them are a matter of, you always have to take T cells from a person. I mean, it's like taking blood, right? You take serum, then you take the cellular part, and you have your T cells. Then you add peptides, and then you see if the T cells respond. So that can be done. But they're not done as routinely. So at a clinical level, for a clinical laboratory, they're not routine assays, as is a neutralization assay. And so we don't have as much data about T cells. And the article that Amy was mentioning earlier is in, what is it, Science Translational Medicine? I don't know. We did it on TWIV a couple of weeks ago. I can look it up. This is really worth looking at, even if you're not a virologist, right? Let's see, TWIV, Bonfire of the Monocytes, was that it? No, that wasn't it. Maybe it was looking into a booster crystal ball. No, a couple of weeks ago, TWIV, we did a paper on, it was an opinion calling for more research into T-cell based correlates of protection and making the assays such that they would be more clinically useful. Okay, so a clinically useful assay is something that can be done in a clinical lab with minimal training and in high numbers, so that you can apply it to a patient situation, and we don't have that at the moment. There you go. I hope that helps. Okay, my two friends went on a cruise. Sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? Tested every day. Day 3, one was positive. Both had to leave the boat. 2 days later, second positive. Both has no symptoms. Yeah, cruise travel is iffy because I don't think that that's a good policy. What's the problem? I mean, if there are unvaccinated people on the cruise, yeah, then I can see that they don't want a positive person on. But why would you want to be taken off? I wouldn't go on a cruise under those conditions. So here's my story. So I'm going to a meeting tomorrow at Cold Spring Harbor, and their requirement is you have to test negative. You have to show proof of vaccination for the meeting, and then you have to test negative within 72 hours. Okay? So I went Monday, got a test. Unfortunately, it was negative. If it had been positive, I couldn't go, and I can't do a TWIV, which is planned and on the program. So what kind of policy is that? Just if everyone's vaccinated, you don't need to have testing as well. It's crazy. Thank you, Sally, for your contribution. And yes, judges shouldn't set public health policy. I don't care what party you're part of. That's not what judges are for. Stay away from public health. Mr. Anderson. Is that Mr. Anderson? I thought Mr. Anderson was Neo. No? Didn't he call it? All right, I believe you, Nathan. That's Mr. Anderson. Yeah, he called Morpheus a virus. That's what I was trying to tell Amy. Didn't do a good job. I'm not good with the cultural stuff, right? I'm good with virus stuff. How likely is it that future variants will be more virulent? So this is a good question that Amy and I clashed on last week. And I said, it hasn't happened yet for SARS-CoV-2. And she said, of course it is. If a virus evades immunity, it's more virulent. And I actually have never looked at virulence that way. So if a virus evades antibodies, is it more virulent? So flu variants every year evade antibodies. Do we call them more virulent? No. Do we call them more transmissible? No. We say they're more fit because they evade immunity and they spread better in the population. So I don't think, with full respect for Amy's opinion, I do not think that evading immunity makes you more virulent. In that case, I don't think so, Hugo, because there has to be some reason to select for a more virulent virus. So more virulence per se doesn't seem to be a selection for something that's selected for, right? So what do I mean by that? So drug resistance is selected for. If you're treating a person with an antiviral drug and a virus arises randomly that's resistant, that will be selected for, which means that it will amplify preferentially compared to all the other viruses in the population. And then what comes out of that person is a fully resistant virus, okay? That's selection. What's the selection for more virulent? I can't see it. I've thought about it for years. The only possibility is if something else is selected for, which then incidentally makes the virus more virulent. That I could fully buy. So it's possible. I think the likelihood is low because I haven't seen that with other human viruses. I haven't seen them evolve to greater virulence, and that is the increased capacity to cause disease. Okay, so that's what I think about that. Many of the listed potential adverse reactions involve the liver, so why is it renally dosed and not hepatically? Well, there's another drug that you have to take with it, ritonavir, which makes it more, it's a cytochrome P450 inhibitor. It makes it more active. So there they look for interactions with other drugs, but I don't know much beyond that. But yeah, I can. Why don't you send it to Daniel? Daniel at microbe.tv. In some good news, we're over a week of daily deaths, 7-day average below 500, been in single digits here in Minnesota for a stretch. Good. I think it's great. Yeah, here we go. Nathan's going to quote Agent Smith. Oh, Smith was the agent's name, yeah. There's another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. Now he's mixing up all kinds of diseases, right? He starts with the virus, which is good. Then he calls them a cancer of the planet. That's just shit screenwriting, right? You're a plague and we're the cure. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Thank you, Nathan. Very good. Here in Minnesota, we've been told to remove bird feeders to stop the spread of bird flu. Well, so it's not a bad suggestion because the birds congregate at a feeder, right? And they can spread. If one is infected, then one could spread it to multiple birds. So, the birds you may have in your yard, the sparrows and blue jays and cardinals and red-breasted titmouse and all that stuff, goldfinch. You don't know which one is infected, but they're all there. I look at our bird feeders and they're all hanging out, different species. Of course, the big birds push the little ones away, but yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. You don't know which ones can be infected, but you might as well be careful. Yep. And So vanity, yeah, you should listen. I said this weeks ago on this live stream. Wearing a mask has made me realize how much we breathe each other's breath, and we're going to do it after we stop wearing masks. I think people like you who are in planes with a lot of people, you can wear a mask. I don't think it makes any difference for you because you're fully vaccinated. What's going to happen to you? Unless you don't want to get any kind of COVID, that's fine. But, my conductors on New Jersey Transit, we don't have to wear masks anymore. They stopped, and I think that's probably not a good thing for them. But on the other hand, what's the difference? Some are saying it's the isolation during the pandemic driving down opportunities for exposure. Not sure that's accurate. No, it's not accurate. People still get together in numbers sufficient to expose. So that's just wishful thinking, I think. You're going to have Trevor Bedford. We're going to have him either Twiv or Tweevo, because Nels, I think, knows him, and sometimes that helps to get something on. So yes, he'll be on one of them for sure. Do B and T cells wane? Contract? Yes, they do. Well, they start to contract within a few weeks. But yes, memory cells hang around. So what you're talking about are the effector, the B cells that are making antibodies, the plasma cells, and the effector T cells, the CTLs and the CD4 T cells. They decline rather rapidly, and the memory cells remain for a long time. I have a great slide illustrating this from my lecture. Let's get it, okay? It shouldn't take too long. Which lecture was they're all downloaded here. So which lecture was adaptive immunity? So that would be like 15, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I want to show you this mechanisms. No, let's look at 14 first to show you this contraction. So, and you're right that here it is. Oh, this is beautiful. Such a beautiful screen share. Here we go. Let's make sure that it's there. Okay, good. This is generation of, this is just T cells, but similar. So here we have, your initial encounter and, 5 to 8 days. Then you have a peak of effector cells. Those are the ones that do the work, the CTLs and the CD4 cells. And then you have a mix of memory cells, of different kinds of memory cells, effector memory, central memory, resident memory, that also go up. And then you can see day 15, the T cells the effector T cells are contracting. And eventually they're very low. But then, your memory T cells persist. Same thing with B cells. And notice I have on this slide, it's called contraction. It's not waning. I don't like the waning word. So there you have it. Let me turn that off. Thank you, Carmen. Good question. Yeah, and SARS-1 memory T cells were found 17 years after infection. So memory T cells can last a long time. Yep. Jack says the CDC is setting up a Center for Forecasting and Outbreak Analytics to act like the National Weather Service, but for infectious diseases. Do you think there is a role for them? I just think it's... No, what do you think about the weatherman or the weather lady? Do you believe them? Mostly no, and they're wrong a lot. Do you want to be wrong about infectious diseases? I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think we have the tools at this point. I mean, you might want to try and go for 10 years down the line. I don't have a problem to do some research to see if you can get it to work, but right now we're not there to have a prediction system, no. In the recent TWIV that covered the preprint with a cohort of 20 looking at infection after vaccination, would you say the interval length being long enough mimics the effect of a booster? I don't remember which one that is, but if it's a couple of months, it's fine. Three to 4 weeks is no good, right? That's the problem. But a couple of months would be fine. That would mimic the effect of a booster. Would an EBV vaccine prevent MS in people that have already been infected? If I understood correctly, EBV is necessary but not sufficient in the progression. So I don't think if you're already infected, a vaccine is going to help, because the problem is in a fraction of people, the antibodies against the virus cross-react with a neural protein. So if you are infected, a vaccine is not going to prevent that. And the problem also is that, let's say you're not infected and you want to make a vaccine, it has to be sterilizing, because even if you get a little virus replication, it's going to establish latency, and then that's it. You can't stop those autoreactive antibodies. So I'm not sure that a vaccine is against EBV can prevent MS. How good is Paxlovid? It's very good. It really improves, if given early after symptom onset within a couple of days, 80% improves the likelihood of progression to severe disease and hospitalization. I didn't tell you the numbers right, but it's really good. It has an 80% impact on progression, 80% decrease in the people going on to serious disease and hospitalization. In comparison, molnupiravir is lower, not as good. And so that's why Daniel Griffin puts molnupiravir at the bottom of the list with remdesivir. And Paxlovid is at the top, followed by monoclonal antibodies. Thank you, Rob, for your contribution. Rob wants us to have a fungal podcast. And I agree, Rob. We'll have a fungal podcast. If anything, we can add a fungal person to TWIM. But it takes time to make pods, so be patient. I need to get some help, and I know I've been saying this for a long time, but it's happening slowly. And when I do, then I could work on more pods, more shows. So the bagels, the bagels. The reason we had this conversation is because a new bagel store opened below the incubator. How about that? It's really good. They have all kinds of stuff. They have a nice seating area. They have outside chairs now they put out because it's warming up a bit. And I'm very tempted to get lunch there, but I can't do that. I have to have my yogurt during the week to keep the weight down. Okay, Patricia, I just talked about selection. I believe you're there to hear this just a few minutes ago, right? So if mutations arise randomly in viruses, and they can be selected for, which means they will be preferentially replicated if they give an advantage to that virus. And the easiest example is if you're treating a patient with an antiviral drug, a mutation may randomly arise in a virus because of error-prone replication, and that mutation will be selected for, which means that virus will reproduce better than the viruses without the mutation because they're inhibited by the drug. So we call that positive selection for the resistance mutation. And that's just one example. There can be many, many kinds of selection. I think chicken farmers get bird flu, but I don't pick people with bird. No, people with bird feeders have never gotten bird flu. The concern is to stop the spread among birds, not to people. If they're stopping you from feeding birds because they're worried about you, that's misguided. I think it's a good idea to stop spread among birds by limiting feeding because that's where birds congregate. And yes, chicken farmers can get bird flu. And it typically doesn't transmit very well once they get it. Yeah. Are immunocompromised people more vulnerable to autoimmune diseases? And if so, don't all of the boosters pose a higher risk? Well, it depends on the immunocompromised, as Amy said earlier. As Amy said earlier, there are different kinds, but my understanding is that they are not more susceptible to autoimmune diseases. They make poor immune responses, particularly autoimmune antibodies. So I don't think that's the case, and so the boosters aren't a higher risk for them. In fact, I think that's the population where the boosters are the most indicated in, because multiple boosting in some cases, for example, if you are on immunosuppressive therapy for a cancer of some sort, then multiple boosting can help induce an immune response. Is there any point to the hand disinfectants everywhere? Is it just in Canada? No, they're everywhere. They're here. There are many places that want you to wash your hands. They have the dispensers everywhere. I don't think it makes an impact on COVID. However, it does impact other virus transmissions. Some common cold viruses are transmitted mainly by hand to nose and eye contact. So I think it can be useful to have generally good hand hygiene for sure. Can you differentiate between COVID antibodies versus COVID vaccine mRNA? So I'm not quite sure what you're asking, whether one can differentiate or I can explain the difference. But, okay, so let's say you want to measure antibodies. Can you differentiate? Okay, now I get it. Antibodies made by infection versus vaccine, okay? Yes, because the vaccines, most of the vaccines only will induce antibodies against the spike protein. And infection will induce antibodies against all proteins. And so all you need to do is look at one other protein besides spike in your antibody test, which is nucleocapsid protein, because it's the most abundant viral protein. You make antibodies against it. So if you have nucleocapsid antibodies, then you have been infected, unless you've gotten a different kind of vaccine that has nucleocapsid. But here in the U.S., none of those are approved, okay? When does a variant become a new virus, like SARS-1 and 2? Omicron is not Delta, so what's the difference? So variant is a very subtle thing. It's just if I had COVID and you did, and we isolated viruses from each of us, they would be slightly different in their genome sequence. They would be variants by definition. And Omicron and Delta are variants of concern because they have a lot of changes, right? That's what defines a variant of concern. A lot of changes which could impact the behavior of the virus in humans, right? So Omicron had a lot of changes, and it turned out that many of those reduced the ability of your serum to block infection. So that's the difference in a variant and a variant of concern. SARS-1 versus 2, now that's a very different virus. You look at the genome identity, and there's a certain percentage of genome identity below which, 80%, it's a very different virus. So SARS-1 and 2 are in the 80s in terms of genome identity, and they're clearly different viruses on that basis. Even though they bind the same cell receptor, the difference in the proteins, the difference in the genome sequence makes them different viruses. Thank you, Morris, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. Please amplify on your throwaway comment that we are all GMO. It was actually Amy's, but I agree. So what is a genetically modified organism? It is an organism to which you add DNA. So you can take corn and put a gene in it to make it drought resistant or insect resistance or whatever you want, right? So now you've modified the genome of the corn. You take a human and you put viral DNA in their genome. They're a genetically modified organism. We have been infected by a variety of viruses over the years, and bits of their DNA is in our genome. So we are genetically modified organisms. We are not like the original Homo sapiens or our ancestor to Homo sapiens. We're modified. That's what we mean by that. And so Amy uses that. That is a good, it's a good use of the example by Amy, I think, to show that stop freaking out about GMOs. We're GMO, okay? Any new thoughts or insight on monoclonals? No, they have their purpose, right? You have to get them soon after symptom onset. And now you don't need to sit in an IV drip anymore. You can get a couple of ml infusion by an intravenous injection sitting in a chair. And so you don't need specials. You don't have to go to a hospital or an infusion center. And they can be very effective if you are an at-risk person or just worried. If you're symptomatic, you can get that. And as long as you make sure they work against the variants. And so immediately when Omicron arose, they checked all the monoclonals that are commercially available, and some of them didn't work anymore, so they're no longer used. And now we have Evu shelled, which works very well, and it lasts for 6 months too, which is really good. You can give that prophylactically if you'd like. '40s and rain in Chicago. Delta's decline seemed too quick to be due to Omicron provided Delta immunity. Right. It wasn't driven by immunity. It was driven by the fact that Omicron is far more fit than Delta, because Delta replication is blocked by antibodies in people induced by vaccination or previous infection. Omicron was not. And so Omicron was able to spread readily in a population that was immune, and where Delta wouldn't spread. And so that's where the competition lies. For hosts, Omicron could reproduce an immune host and Delta could not. It's very clear. Oh, Jeff, there you are. So I've been telling Rima to contact you. Rima's here. I'll be in Nebraska on I am arriving on May 10th at 2:30 p.m., okay? It's a Tuesday. I'm going to my hotel. You guys can meet me there if you want, because I have to go to dinner with the people, my hosts, but I have a couple of hours before dinner, I think, and we can go somewhere and chill, okay? May, whatever I just said, I've already forgotten. And Rima is here on the chat. I asked him to contact you, but he didn't know who you were, even though you guys have been in this chat together for a long time. Okay, what are your thoughts on the nasal spray? What is this nasal spray? Which one? I get confused. Let's look it up. Northwestern. I want to see what's in it. If it's a vaccine, then that's fine. Okay, a new protein-based antiviral is being advanced towards phase 1. It's a protein. What is it? This proteins bind to the spike protein and make them difficult to attach to the cell. What do I think of that? It's possible that it could be useful, but this is going to have to, as you said, it's going to have to be a nasal spray because it's not going to work by injecting it into muscle. And so the question is, when are you going to take this, right? You're going to take it every day for the whole season, for the whole outbreak? I don't know. Are you going to take it on symptom onset? You got to see what the clinical trials look. It could help, but it's all in the trial, right? Thank you, DR, for your contribution. I think there's a significant risk of African swine fever virus going zoonotic. You mean spilling over into people? I don't think so. I'm not sure that that's one of the concerns there. I think it's distant enough that it's not an issue. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of animals are either burned or buried alive. In Malaysia, during the Nipah outbreak, they buried 1 million pigs. They dug huge pits and pushed them in with bulldozers. I think this is just horrible. And you can find movies of that on YouTube, of them pushing the pigs into a pit and then bulldozing them over with dirt. I mean, what the hell? I mean, you got to make a choice between people and pigs, I suppose. But 1 million pigs is a lot to cull, right? I would have figured something else out. Very tough. Thank you, Jack, for being a long-term Patreon subscriber. I appreciate it. Bald eagles were depleted and have rebounded. Amy is thinking of California condors that were captured, tagged, bred, released, and still on the brink of extinction. Okay. I am not a bird expert, for sure. I know viruses, folks. Please help fill in my gap of understanding. Antibodies attack viral particles, yet T cells go for infected cells, creating a lot of cell death. Seems like it would be better to have more of the former. So that's where human assessment fails, right? You're taking a human view, And I always warn people, don't look at a virus for a human, from a human viewpoint, because viruses are not people. Antibodies don't all attack viral particles. Most of them do. Many of them do. There are many antibodies that bind virus particles and prevent them from getting into cells, right? But there's some antibodies that bind virus particles and, that bind cell surfaces, and then cells like NK cells kill the infected cell. The problem is, once you have cells infected, then the antibodies can be overwhelmed, and that's where a T cell killing the infected cell is good. And that's why T cells prevent severe disease. Now, the problem is T cells kill cells, right? And so, yeah, that's a problem. And for many diseases, many viral diseases, the pathology is contributed to great degree by T cells killing infected cells. Absolutely. But it's a double-edged sword, right? The immune response is both good and bad, because you have to pay the price, and the price is killing cells and also cytokines that cause tissue damage and so forth. In Maryland, some farmers talking amongst each other. Sheep are getting cold-like symptoms and dying within days. Farm cats being diagnosed with COVID. Have you heard of this? Amy's gone. I haven't heard of it. No, I have not. Let's take a look at ProMed and see if there's anything about sheep or cats. You know, cats can get COVID, but I don't know anything about, mass outbreaks. Tularemia, avian influenza, Japanese encephalitis, plague, Rift Valley, canine distemper. No, I don't see any sheep die-offs, right? In the U.S. Maryland. No, not now. Okay, so I don't know anything about it. Sorry, CA. Paraphrasing Rodney Dangerfield, T cells would say, I don't get no research at all. It's not exactly true, as I ranted earlier. They do get some, but for COVID, not the right research to tell you about correlates of protection. Yeah, we have 339 likes and 525 listeners, which is awesome. Wow, that's pretty cool. Why don't you like it? Who has time to sit down for long in a lab? I never used to sit down in a lab. But 1890s, some people in the lab are sitting down a lot because there are a lot of people doing computational stuff. And what I don't understand is why people are looking at their cell phones all day in the lab. They should be reading, well, if they're reading a journal article, that's fine, but you might as well read it on the screen. It's easier to see on the screen. So basically, I don't think people work hard enough. But I'm just old school, and that's a typical thing for an old school person. The egg chair is not for sitting in a lab, by the way. It's for home. Okay, now you're all saying goodbye to Amy. I have to get through this. She got a job somewhere. Where we'll never know. Well, I'm not sure where you will never know. You'll find out once she gets there, okay? She just doesn't want it. She's nervous to tell you until she gets there because, yeah, she's nervous like that. But you'll find out because hopefully she is going to continue doing live streams, right? I hope she can do it. So stay tuned. Don't be so negative, Patricia. Can I please increase the font size from the commenters? Yeah, I see it's pretty small. Even for my old eyes. Yeah, I can increase the font size. Let's do that here. The little, you can't see this, but I'm doing it. All right, right now it's 32. Let's make it 36. Maybe 40. I run the risk of it running off the screen, right? So let's see how that looks for now. We'll give it a few minutes to refresh on my other thing, see what it looks like. Yeah, the cost of a dress is calculated on how many times you wear it. So many years ago, we bought a sailboat it was a nice sailboat, 30 foot. I'd never learned to sail it, but my son used to sail it, and it cost $12,000. And every summer we would sail it 2 times. And I used to say, okay, now you're getting close to $1,000 per sail. Why don't you keep it up? And then we finally sold it last summer for, I think, I don't know, $8,000. So it cost us $4,000, and maybe we did 10, 15 sails, it's pretty expensive per sail. It's not worth it. Too much upkeep for a sailboat. A lot of you love sailing. Daniel Griffin does. I think it's a cool thing, but I don't have time to go sailing. Spike proteins from vaccinations are traveling to ovaries, liver, and other parts of the body. How dangerous is this? Well, I think when you overdose mice, yeah, you can find them pretty much everywhere, but we're not overdosing people. And so I think there are minimal amounts of spike going to other organs, and I don't think it's an issue at all. There's no evidence for that. The BC government is advertising that you need to get a booster after getting COVID to restore your immunity. This is BS. Now, let's say you never had a vaccine and then you get COVID. You should get 1 or 2 doses of vaccine, because studies have shown now very clearly, one infection and recovery does not give you, if it's not Omicron, it does not protect you against Omicron. So if you got infected with Delta, unless you get a vaccine dose or 2, you're not going to be protected against Omicron. But if you have been vaccinated twice and you're infected, you're good. You don't need another booster afterwards. Are the possible side effects of the vaccination worth it if they're only good for 4 months? So this is probably a comment that was removed, I think. But I can easily shred it to pieces, okay? First of all, it's not only good for 4 months. Nancy Drew, sad that you took up such a nice character name. It's not only good for 4 months. It's maybe good for 17 years, as we just said a little while ago. We just haven't gone 17 years to know that. So the antibody levels go down in 4 months, but you're still protected against severe disease. And that's why I lament that people focus too much on antibodies. And there are no deadly side effects. There are rare myocarditis with mRNA vaccines in boys of a certain age. Treatable for sure. There are potentially fatal outcomes of the adenovirus vectors, rather rare, but again, these are blood clotting issues, things that we can look out for. And other than that, I know of no other potential and deadly side effects. And many hundreds of millions of people have gotten these vaccines, and people are not dropping dead left and right. So, all wrong, Nancy Drew, I'm sorry to say. Do you think we've had more flu pandemics if we hadn't been vaccinated all these decades? No, I don't think so. I think we'd have the same number because we'd have natural immunity. We'd have natural immunity applying the selection pressure as well. What are the chances to infect my unvaccinated kids if I have J&J and a Moderna? I soon need to teach in an unmasked, unvaccinated Florida classroom, and I'm really stressed about that. Yeah, I don't blame you, Marlene. It's absurd that you can't wear a mask to protect those kids. So you need to stay away from them. And I know it's hard with young kids. But the good news is that, the rate of severe side effects is much, much lower than in older kids. So, almost 1,000 kids have died of COVID in the U.S. alone, and it's not right for a less than 5-year-old to die. Not right for anyone to die, but it's low compared to other age groups. So if that's any solace, but try and stay away. Try and stay away. I'm sorry that you can't. It's really unfortunate that you can't exercise your right to mask, right? Isn't that crazy? Ay, ay, ay. Open the windows? Maybe you can't, right? Lex Friedman strikes me as one of those people who can't see the forest for the trees, slick, but in the end average. I guess he impressed me because he was talking about robotics. He's into that, and he has robotics all over the place, and he's starting a robotics company. But I should have learned from the fact that he said, but I'm not starting the company because I want to podcast right now. Because, he gets a lot of adulation from podcasting. And I think that's addictive, right? Whereas starting a company, you're not going to get a lot of adulation, at least not at first. Hey, Callista, how are you? I thought of you today because I'm looking at this haircut, and I really don't like how she just made it so even. Anyway, thank you for your support, Callista. We really appreciate it. Moderna released data that their bivalent performs better. What does that mean? I'd have to have a look at that. If you tell me it gives you antibodies, I don't care. I really don't care about antibody levels. And if they think that's all that matters, they're wrong. I want to know about protection from severe disease and hospitalization. And they're going to have to come up with data. Well, the FDA is becoming easy to convince now, right? Yep. What is your take on Dr. Geert Vandenbosch's theory of a more virulent and transmissible variant becoming dominant? It's just idiocy, sheer idiocy with no understanding of basic virology behind it. Why would you listen to someone like that? Oh my gosh. No clue. Geert doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. As I said before, there's no reason why it becomes more virulent. Transmissible, yeah. Omicron is more transmissible because it evades immunity. It's not inherently more transmissible, but it spreads better in a population because it evades immunity. But as I said before, virulent, no. And people say this for attention. I mean, he doesn't even understand the theoretical underpinnings, but he's saying it to get attention. He gets a lot of attention. Whereas I say no, and nobody pays attention to me, right? Except you guys. I shouldn't say no. Nobody. You guys are all terrific, and I appreciate you being here. Okay. As someone who's done flow for years, it's bothersome that more B and T science isn't taking place. The problem in 1890 is that everyone wants the glory of jumping into COVID and getting hot cell and Nature and Science papers, and they're not doing the hard experiments that address the underlying mechanisms. And it really bugs me, and I can't wait for this to be over so we can get back to normal science. Although I don't know if we ever will, because people are going to be working on this for a long time. And Elizabeth is right on. The public can't tell the difference between real expertise and people who say they're experts. Okay, explain this. I've been doing this communication stuff since 2006. And yeah, we do pretty well, but I don't do Lex Friedman and other people who you know about that have millions of followers because I speak the truth. They don't want the truth. They want fraud and sensationalism. It has always been the case that drives, remember, what do they call that journalism? My mother used to teach journalism and talk about this all the time. They used to be sensationalists, and that's how they would sell newspapers. In the days there were newspapers. On the train now and then, one or two people, older people, come on and they have a newspaper and they open it up and read it. I find that so cool. It makes me think that they have some modicum of education that they would like to read. I know that you can read on a tablet or a phone, but I don't know. There's something about that. I don't have a paper. I never read paper things anymore, so I'm guilty as charged. If you live with someone who has COVID, they're the 80% who don't spread, and you take no precautions. You get any immunity from them spreading No, you don't. You have to be infected, and the virus has to reproduce in you to get immunity. So if you don't get infected, which means the virus comes in and reproduces, you're not getting immunity. Novavax is being slow walked. I don't know what the problem is. Neither does Daniel. And I should correct Den, because someone else asked, what is non-infectious virus? No, these people who don't transmit, it's not that they're shedding non-infectious virus. They're just shedding a very little amount of it. And so they are not transmitting. Yeah. You just watched me on Lex. I thought we had a good chat about viruses, but then Lex decided to trash me later on and say my responses were off the cuff. Well, screw you, Lex. They're not off the cuff, as I said earlier. Virulence is the capacity to cause damage to a host. Thank you, Elise. It's exactly as I define it in my course. And my course is out there for everyone to watch. It's not that hard to take. It's not boring at all. You should take it and learn a few things. And I'm not talking to you folks here because many of you have taken it. I think the average person out there ought to take it and learn something. Thank you, Pamela, for your contribution. Someone who got COVID following the vaccine and booster less likely to infect others. Yes. Less likely for a shorter period of time. All right, we're reaching the end here. Vincent, they should have hired you as an advisor. So let me tell you a story. Years ago, a lady in Hollywood sends me a script. She said, we want to make this TV series about making somebody captures two virologists and puts them in a jail and says, in a lab, but locks them up and says, you have to make a more virulent virus in 48 hours. And I said, well, this is just bogus because it takes much longer than that. And you can't do it to begin with. And even if you could, it would take more than 48 hours. So I pointed out all the shortcomings. And she said, oh, thank you. I'm sorry we don't have any money to pay you, but thank you so much. I said, anytime. And then a year later, she said, hey, we found money and we found someone at CDC to hire. Screw you. I'm the one who told you what was wrong with it. Why couldn't you hire me? I mean, I don't need that, but what is she thinking? Is this how Hollywood works? When I find money, we'll call you, oh, but we found someone else. And I'm sorry, nobody at CDC is going to be better than the job I do for you. Poof. Probably a dumb question, but if you decide to wear masks all the time, are you hurting your immunity? No, because you're not going to wear them all the time. You're going to take them off at home. And masks are not 100%, right? Maybe 70 to 80%. So you're still going to get microbes. So it's not an issue. All right, we need to wind down here. Sylvia, thank you. What about the bird baths? I recently got them, but they have a fountain that circulates water. Does that help? The birds are congregating. They could transmit to each other. You might want to shut it off just until this outbreak passes. They do pass. They don't last forever. Yeah. Just to be safe. It's not like it's a sure thing that it's the right thing to do, but just to be safe. Let's see who else I should be thanking. Laura, thank you so much for your contribution. Who else do we have to thank here? Okay. No, I don't want to run the CDC. Absolutely not. I want to run Microbe TV and make a superb science communication company that lasts beyond me and which educates people. And that's what I want to do. I have no interest in being a bureaucrat at the CDC. And I think neither does Amy. Amy wants to run a lab, and she will. What's the purpose of the spike protein? Well, the spike protein is a virus protein, right? It's a virus protein that allows the virus to attach to receptors on cell surfaces and get into your cells and begin reproducing. And that's what it's there for. All right, folks, 3 more minutes. Let's see what we can pick out. Can we get over 400 likes? Now we're down to 480 people. Let's see if we can do that. 377 likes. And in the meantime, I will find some more. Sally says, in defense of us lay people, it's confusing when experts give different advice, especially with respect to the second booster. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I would indict the experts. They're the problem because they're all spouting off left and right. I don't spout off. I just talk to you folks, right? I'm never on the news. Nobody has me on their shows anymore. But I talk to you and I tell you what I think. And I'm sorry if the experts, quote unquote, say different things. Now, if you want to just follow the CDC advice, and I will tell you why they may be wrong or not, but that's one way to do it. Geert is about to release a paper. Will I read it? I will read the first paragraph and tell you it's a waste of time, but I'll do that much. How about that? That would be fine. Callista! Why is it if I don't get enough regular sleep, I end up catching a cold? So sleep is important. Rest is important for having a strong immune system. Exactly how, we don't know. The mechanism is unknown. But yes, many people are susceptible to that. Not all. There's other stress induces infections. But yes, it's not surprising. Get rest for sure. I would like to thank the moderators tonight. We have Les, we have Steph, we have Tom, we have what the heck? Vanity Nutrition, right? Les, Steph, Vanity Nutrition, Tom, and we don't have Frank tonight. But thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. Ian, thank you so much. Kia ora for your contribution. Really appreciate it. How is the Bluetti? It's in the box still at the incubator. I haven't taken it out because I want to make an unboxing for you, but I will do that. So stay tuned. So thanks everyone for coming tonight. I appreciate it. I will be back next week at 8 p.m. We're going to do 8 p.m. next week because I'm done teaching at Columbia. So maybe for some of you, it'll be a little bit easier. But if I didn't answer your question, bring it back next week, Wednesday, every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Stay safe, folks. Thanks for coming, and we will see you next time. Good night.